Welcome back to the Rebel's Edge. I'm Jon Najarian. My brother Pete Najarian joins shortly to describe for you exactly what's happening after an 1,100-point rally for the Dow. Is it still a buy? Well, we'll have some answers for you on today's Rebel's Edge. Bang.
All righty, here we go. Another one, John. We got a lot of stuff to cover, man. We got a lot of stuff to cover here and some sports.
Let's dive in then. That's Pete Najarian, folks. I think up in Minnesota today. I'm Jon Najarian down in Puerto Rico, but I'll be in New York this afternoon. All right, let's dive in, Pete. Starting with, of course, macro key inflation data. Oh, everybody was so worried. Yeah, Trump's tariffs are going to really move inflation up. Well, they didn't. In fact, it eased slightly to 2.3% in April. Core inflation remains steady at a 4-year low. You heard that right, folks. 4-year low. So, wow, these tariffs are really impacting the consumer, aren't they, Pete?
Well, it seems that they are, John. They just have to do another survey of some section of the world that they know exactly what people are thinking and what they're going to say to be able to say it. I mean, it's gotten that bad. It really has gotten that bad. All that being said, you're right. I mean, I think that is the most important part of the catalyst of today is absolutely what's going on with inflation. And I think people were looking at that pretty excited.
Yep. Well, and they should, I think, Pete. They should, because the fact that inflation is not running away means the likelihood that the Fed can cut is even better, of course. And just think, Pete, we're down from a high of almost 9% under Biden, and now we're down to 2.3 and 2.8 overall. I mean, you know, we're getting down there where the Fed wants to see it. So that's a big thumbs up. As far as fantastic futures, I'm looking at copper, I'm looking at gold, I'm looking at silver. Now they're stable today, Pete, the precious metals are. And copper, more or less of those three, a bigger piece of the industrial side, also stable. So I think all of that is pretty good news.
Yeah, I'm just going to hit what I always hit, John, because it's there every day and it's the most important thing. The volatility index, it's only down 28% in 5 days. I mean, that is exactly what we've talked about in the past, though. It moves up pretty dramatically and it moves down pretty dramatically. And this is another one of those. You go back just to May 7th, John, we were trading 25.66 on the VIX. Now today, we got all the way down to 17.65 for the low. Last I looked, we were around 17.79. Gives you a little perspective of how fast it can move down. And we're out of that no man's land that we talked about just the other day, where you get into the mid-20s. Well, here we are right now. We're in the 17s.
Well, let's dive into stocks, Pete, because UNH, which is a company right based where Pete is, folks, up in Minnesota, and they have not exactly covered themselves in glory lately. Obviously, our hearts go out to the CEO and his family that was killed, murdered on the street in New York. That's not the company's fault, but the most recent CEO, Pete, said, no mas. He basically said, just like hands of stone, he said, I ain't doing this anymore, man. I'm out of here. And what happened? He said, I can't give guidance. I think everything's crap over here. More or less, that's what he said, Pete. He said, I'm not taking the blame. I'm out of here. So they basically let him go when he said, I'm out. And they put another guy in who's going to be the chairman and CEO, chairman of the board and CEO. He was already on the board. What do you think of this move?
Yeah, I got to tell you, there's a good reason. You said more or less. I'd say definitely more to that answer of that question, because the stock hit a 52-week low today of 316. The high was 630. So gives you a little perspective of this is a company that has been getting hit, and they just can't seem to be able to get anything working for them, John. Yeah, this resignation sure is pretty interesting. He said it was for personal reasons. We'd take him at his word. I'm sure that there is something there, but this wasn't all that long ago that he was put into this position. So I don't know what came on so fast, but something certainly did. Helmsley, the nice thing about him is he's been there before, so he can be there now and be maybe that stable thing that they want. And maybe it's something where it's fairly short term. So I don't know. I don't know how much lower the stock can go because it's gotten the crap kicked out of it. It literally has. But that being said, it's probably one that you're getting to a point where maybe, just maybe, they're able to turn the corner. But the problem still is what you mentioned as well. On top of everything else, they're saying, hey, look, we got no ability to throw out guidance at all right now. So that can be a problem. And I think a lot of people will probably stay away for a little while on that, John. But at some point, this thing turns back, I think. But they've got to have somebody and a CEO who's willing to be there for more than a couple of months, probably.
The stock was $623 a share in November. It is now $319 a share.
Oh,
so for a company that just, basically used to be a printing press for money. All right. Speaking of a printing press for money, Coinbase, Pete, they are going to replace Discover Financial, DFS, in the S&P 500 effective prior to the opening of trade on May 19th. So just 6 days hence. And yes, we had unusual activity in this name. And that was when the stock was a heck of a lot cheaper than it is right here, Pete. This is great news for Coinbase being included in the S&P 500, of course, and great news for anybody who was following those trades of ours. By the way, if you want to get trades like that every day, just go over to marketrebellion.com/get started. And you could get started with education and options and or subscriptions. So what do you make of the Coinbase move today, Pete?
Yeah, pretty unbelievable, John. I mean, this is a big company that's gone up now 17% today or more. It's still down just a little bit year to date, but it's probably going to cross over that, if not today, maybe in the next couple of days. It's sitting smack dab in the middle of the 52-week low and the 52-week high. This is a great treat and something very new for the S&P because of the fact of crypto. There's not a whole lot of representation of crypto, John, in the S&P 500. They have some pieces that are connected to crypto. This one, very connected. So it's very, very interesting to see. And I think it's something where maybe it's got a little bit more legs. I really do think that. We saw that unusual option activity that's been there. But I also look at this company and think, you know what? You're back in, now you're actually in the S&P. I think that there's a shot for this stock to get quite a bit higher than it is right now. And it's done a nice job already today.
Well, let's hit one more unusual activity that hit for us, Pete. This one in First Solar, FSLR. Now, they had strong momentum and they benefited from some of the money that was thrown at these guys during the so-called Inflation Reduction Act, Pete. And they cited that. But they're also getting a little bit of a benefit from anti-China sentiment from some of the Chinese imported solar cells and so forth. So this upgrade by Wolf Research was pretty big, and somebody sort of anticipated it, it seems, Pete.
No.
Because they were buying upside calls in First Solar, and those calls have gone pretty deep in the money. Now, when Pete and I talk about this, folks, unusual activity, I'll say it quickly, Pete, but number one, not everyone hits. We understand that. It's 75 to 80% of the time, I think, people that follow unusual activity, they're on the right side of the market. But number one, we don't trade every single one of these because we get 30 or 40 readings a day. More. But if you're somebody who was watching solar and you wanted to jump on something, when this thing was, significantly lower than where it is today, I love it when they tip us off, Pete. And that's just what they did in First Solar.
Yeah, and you talked about Wolf Research, and they put an outperform on this thing. They also put a price target of 221, John. So here we are today. We're sitting at about, let's call it 191. It's up about 21%. It ain't that far away, but it's a pretty nice move if it can make that move. So I like what they're talking about here. And there could be reason for it to actually get squeezed up there, so to speak, because of the fact that there are shorts in there, John, somewhere between 9 and about 11%. On top of all of that, here's the last thing I'll tell you about the company itself that's been very well run. They got a PE of 10. There's not a whole lot of stocks out there with a PE of 10 that are big names like this, that are moving around and make this kind of move like we're seeing today. I think that the only thing that I think that holds them back at all for me is they have a tremendous amount of cash burn. Other than that, I'm looking at this thing and the PE is great. The fact that they have the shorts in there, that's a good opportunity for a squeeze. So there's a lot of reasons right now, I think, that First Solar, this might not be done. This thing might have a little bit more gas underneath it to be able to push to the upside, or sun, maybe.
Yeah. And I like it, Pete. Elon Musk is over there in Saudi Arabia with the president, and he's already made one announcement, and that is that he's providing Starlink, his space-based internet to the world, now to Saudi Arabia, which is pretty cool. And I think we're going to see more and more of this kind of stuff happening, Pete, because of the need, basically, for people to be connected around the world and for power. First Solar's one of them. Tesla also, don't forget, folks, They don't just make cars and they don't just have data. They also have those power walls, they call them, which is more or less a direct competitor with the likes of First Solar. All right, Sea Ltd, Pete. This one, what do they do? Well, they're offshore drilling. No, they're not. Sea Ltd, you hear that name and you immediately think, well, it must be something to do with the ocean. No, it's an Asian company that has digital wallets, that has all kinds of infrastructure for the new way that we're going to be trading currencies and so forth, Pete. And they are moving up strong on some pretty good earnings, but they weren't like blowout outstanding. So apparently people were thinking things could have been rough, but instead they're not. And the stock's up 7%.
Yeah, it's a really nice move for the stock. And like you said, I mean, on the earnings, they beat by a penny. That doesn't seem like a whole heck of a lot, but people really seem to like it. On the revenue, they actually missed by a little bit. So, but I will say this on that. With the revenue, it's still up 29% year over year. Now, that's a big number. So even though they missed, I think people were willing to look back and say, okay, a year ago it was what? And now it's what? And they're embracing that in a big way. So I like their balance sheet, John. There's not anything, when I looked at this company, there's almost nothing that I didn't like about everything that they are fundamentally. And I think that makes it pretty interesting. Free cash flow, solid. Cash to debt, $4.4 billion. Everywhere I looked, it hit a 52-week high today. That was pretty strong. I think it was a little over 155, maybe it was 156. Strong, big volumes early as well. So people have pounced on this one today, and they're really, really getting very, seems like they're pretty happy about what they're doing, because this company is absolutely executing, it seems like, very, very well. Even if it's not huge to look at, but you look year over year, that's what made this thing so strong, I think, today.
Well, let's dive into Pete's Red Zone Sports. And other than Aaron Rodgers, Pete, he might be part of this conversation, but other than Aaron Rodgers, something that's in the news every day for the last 3 days has been the New Orleans Saints. So why don't you tell us what the heck is going on there?
Well, it's interesting, the timing of this whole thing, but Derek Carr has been around for a long time, been in the NFL, great quarterback. His brother was a great quarterback. I think they're both out of like Fresno State or something like that. In any case, great quarterbacks, right? Mm-hmm. Derek Carr has had a great career. All of a sudden, he literally just a day or two ago stepped up and said, you know what? I got to retire. And who can blame him when you realized how bad his shoulder really is, John? But I would have thought going into the draft, you might have been knocking on the door of Derek Carr saying, hey, how's it going and how you feeling? I don't know what happened there. I really don't. But that being said, I think the New Orleans Saints are a very another interesting team if maybe Rodgers is thinking about it, right? I mean, these guys, they know each other pretty well. I'm sure these quarterbacks all talk to one another. So I think there's a number of different quarterbacks who could go down there, because right now, John, they don't have anybody on their roster either. Underneath Derek Carr, nothing. other than, they had a good draft pick this year out of Louisville, but we don't know what he's going to look like. And most rookie quarterbacks pretty much struggle. So I don't know that they want to go that route either. So I'm looking at it this way. I think it could be Aaron Rodgers, maybe. And I think dollar-wise, it would probably work out. I got another one for you. And I know it's a little strange, but how about Kirk Cousins? Kirk Cousins basically lost his job last year in Atlanta. They gave him all the money in the world. He got benched at the end. Penix came in, filled in, and did a really nice job. And a lot of people have been kicking around, well, maybe Kirk Cousins goes to Pittsburgh. Maybe he does. If he goes to Pittsburgh, Aaron Rodgers has one last chance, and that would be down there in New Orleans. But maybe one of those two guys, John, because it makes some sense. Here's the quarterbacks on the Cleveland roster right now. Joe Flacco, Gabriel, Pickett, Sanders, and Watson. Joe Flacco might be decent enough. He's certainly been around for a long time, John, and he's actually stepped up and done a good job at times. Maybe Flacco would be a guy who could step in down there too. So I'm giving you three because there's no way looking at Cleveland, they're going to hold on to five quarterbacks. They just won't. They'll have three when it's all said and done, but they're not going to have five. So they could very easily make it something in an easy way for Joe Flacco maybe to slide down there too.
Well, the Saints, Pete, just moments ago announced what was rumored to be they signed this guy, Hunter Deckers, an undrafted free agent out of Iowa State. Iowa State? Who's ever come out of Iowa State? Oh, turns out Mr. Irrelevant came out of Iowa State.
Yeah.
And Mr. Irrelevant is going to be looking more like Mr. Elephant with his huge pile of money that they're going to give him, because when he gets paid by San Francisco, that's the quarterback we're talking about, folks. When he gets paid by San Francisco, it's going to be 40 to 50 million a year is what he's going to sign for. So maybe there's something in the water in Iowa State, Pete. I don't know, but the Saints felt good enough about him to say, you know what? Let's grab another quarterback. Now we got four. But to your point, Pete, they still might sign Flacco. They still might trade for him, or they might trade for Cousins, or they might sign Rodgers. Who knows?
Yeah, they need somebody with some experience, in my opinion. At least one. At least, somebody. I mean, Spencer Rattler's been there very short term. You look at who they've got. They really don't have anybody with real experience in the NFL, and I think that's lacking. Brock Purdy, I'll tell you what, he's proven to be one of the better quarterbacks in the entire NFL. We got to love that guy, and not selfish. John, he's even said he might not take 40. He might go lower than that just to be able to keep all the roster and all the money flowing at San Francisco. So we'll see how that all plays out. But you know what? The guy had a roommate his first 2 years in San Francisco. So to save on money, that's who the guy is. So you got to love him. John, I just got a quickie for the NBA. So the Celtics.
Okay.
Now the Celtics.
By the way, you have a video for this, right?
Oh, that's right. We got that video. Let's go to the video. This is good.
This is good.
Was the NBA draft lottery just rigged? The Mavericks ended up winning the draft lottery, and they only had a 1.8% chance to win going in. This is one of the biggest draft upsets in history, and it really has to get you thinking. Did Adam Silver promise Nico Harrison Cooper flag for Luka Doncic? With LeBron James being close to on his way out, the Lakers needed a new savior. And now the worst trade in NBA history turns into this ridiculous trio. Maybe Nico Harrison knew all along. Clearly, Adam Silver promised Nico Harrison the #1 pick in the draft if he traded Luka Doncic to the Lakers.
It's unreal. Absolutely, it's pretty unreal. And I was going to go through just the fact that the Celtics now find themselves down, 3-1 right now with the Knicks, John. So, and that was another great game last night. You know who else found themselves down 3-1? Well, Golden State. And it doesn't look much better or very promising for them. And I'll tell you what, it wasn't just, I love, Ant. Ant's one of the best basketball players, I think, on the planet. He really is. But Julius Randle was part of the trade with our guy, Big Cat, who went out there, and he's doing well with the Knicks, and that's the team in front of Boston. Well, I'll tell you what, Julius Randle was the pick the player that we were able to get here in Minnesota, and that guy is playing lights out in the playoffs. Absolutely had a great year again, and lights out. So pretty phenomenal. John, this whole thing with Dallas just makes me wonder more and more about what's going on with Adam Silver, the fact that he's overlooked all of the other things that we've talked about, particularly load management, some of those kinds of things. I don't know how the NBA is going to keep on doing this, and I don't know if ESPN is going to want to try to cancel that whole thing for them to be able to cover the NBA, because they certainly are losing money. There's no doubt about that. They much overpaid for what they did. But a 1.8% shot on the first pick in the draft and it goes to Dallas, seems a little bit odd, but it sure would be probably a great landing place for Cooper Flagg. But yeah, I think this is all a big setup, and I think that was what was implied on that last video that we watched as well.
Yeah, well, it's always interesting when they get so far against the odds, Pete. Like he said, less than a 2% chance out of all the teams for them to come up with the ball, if you will, when they do that selection. That, oh yeah, well, Dallas got it. How exactly did that happen, Adam Silver? Well, I'm sure we'll be talking about it for weeks to come, Pete. But in the meantime, folks, Pete and I will be on the New York Stock Exchange floor tomorrow with our friend Nicole Pelladidis. And she is, of course, with Schwab. We're looking forward to being on the floor with her tomorrow. That'll be on at, I think, noon Eastern time tomorrow, Pete. I don't know if they're live or if they record them, but we will be there. And obviously, it'll stress us a little bit with the Rebels Edge, but there'll still be a Rebels Edge tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern time. We hope you tune into both.